At 82 years of age, my journey through life has been rich with experiences, yet a single decision casts a long shadow: my move to a residential care facility. Initially, it appeared to be a sensible choice. My family advocated for it, promising comprehensive care and comfort. I trusted their judgment, but the reality I encountered differed vastly from my expectations. Many individuals may be contemplating this option, either for themselves or a cherished family member. Perhaps it feels like the safest course of action, or you have been told it will simplify life. However, before taking that step, allow me to share 6 insights I wish I had possessed beforehand. Life in a care facility extends beyond mere convenience. It profoundly alters everything, and reversing the decision is more challenging than one might imagine. Stay with me until the end, as some of these lessons may be quite unexpected. If you know someone considering such a move, this information might be precisely what they need before making a life-altering determination. Regret number 1, the erosion of my self-reliance. The most jarring realization after entering the care facility wasn't the confined living space, the inflexible meal schedules, or even the unfamiliar faces. It was the stark acknowledgement that I had relinquished control over my own existence. Prior to moving in, I had established routines. I determined when to rise, when to eat, and how to spend my day. I could take a stroll whenever I desired, prepare my own meals, or simply unwind with a book in my favorite chair. However, within the care facility, I soon understood that my time was no longer my own. Everything operated according to a predetermined schedule that wasn't mine. Breakfast was served at a fixed time, regardless of my appetite. Lights were to be turned off at a specific hour, irrespective of my readiness for sleep. Even a simple desire to take a walk outdoors required permission and often involved waiting for available assistance. Basic decisions such as choosing what to eat or wear began to feel like privileges rather than inherent rights. I recall during my initial week there, awakening in a bed that felt foreign. I sat up, stretched, and reached for the book I had been enjoying at home. But as I scanned the room, the reality sunk in. This wasn't my home. My books, my favorite chair, the small comforts I had accumulated over the years were gone. In their place were sterile walls, a bed chosen by someone else, and a persistent feeling of displacement. I was no longer the master of my own destiny. The most difficult aspect was understanding that once you surrender your autonomy, reclaiming it becomes nearly impossible. You adapt out of necessity. You cease questioning the meal choices. You stop requesting impromptu walks. You learn to conform to the established system. But in doing so, you begin to lose your sense of self. If you're considering a care facility, ask yourself if you are prepared to relinquish the small freedoms that define your life. Because once they are gone, you will miss them more profoundly than you can currently imagine. Regret number 2, the sensation of being forgotten. One of the most disheartening truths about moving into a residential care facility is the realization that the outside world continues its rhythm without you. Upon my arrival, my family assured me of frequent visits. I believed them, and initially, they kept their promise. My daughter's visits were initially a weekly highlight, and the weekends were brightened by my grandchildren. During those early days, I felt a comforting tether to my former existence. However, as time passed, the frequency of these visits dwindled. My daughter's presence transitioned into phone calls, and my grandchildren became preoccupied with the demands of school and their jobs. Holidays proved to be particularly challenging. Despite assurances of visits, plans invariably shifted at the last moment, leaving me isolated in the communal area. I often watched other residents gazing longingly at the entrance, hoping for a sign that someone remembered them. It wasn't a matter of my family ceasing to care, rather, life's obligations intervened. When one is no longer a constant presence in others' lives, it becomes effortless for them to assume all is well, that you are adjusting seamlessly. and that your need for attention has diminished. Yet the reality is that prolonged stays in a nursing facility can lead to a gradual erosion of one's presence in the minds of loved ones, despite their love, making it easy to forget how much you still crave connection. I recall one particular evening, sitting in my room, phone in hand, contemplating a call to my son. I hesitated, not wanting to impose or remind him of my existence, of the lonely vigil I kept for a visit that might never materialize. Ultimately, I set the phone down, and the realization dawned upon me. This was now my reality, watching the days drift by, yearning for someone to remember to include me. If you are contemplating a move to a nursing facility, consider the potential for loneliness. Regardless of your family's affection, once you are out of sight, it becomes easier than you might think to fade from their thoughts. Regret number 3, the loss of purpose. Upon entering the nursing facility, I believed I was simply relocating my residence. I failed to grasp that I was also fundamentally altering my reason for being. At home, I had duties, established routines, interests, and a reason to rise each morning. Even the small acts, watering the plants, preparing my own coffee, tidying my space, provided a sense of direction. However, in the nursing facility, those daily rituals vanished. Meals were provided, cleaning was handled by others, and the plants were no longer under my care. Initially, I told myself that it would be delightful to finally relax, to be free of chores and obligations, and simply rest. But after a few weeks, I realized that something vital was missing. The days felt protracted, stretched out with nothing to do but wait. I observed the same phenomenon in other residents. Individuals who had once been brimming with energy now spent their days seated, staring, waiting for time to pass. There was an 84-year-old gentleman named George who had been a carpenter his entire life. At home, he was constantly repairing items, constructing small projects in his garage, but here there were no tools, no projects, nothing for him to create. I witnessed his gradual withdrawal. His hands, once strong and skilled, now sat idly in his lap. "I feel useless," he confessed to me one day, and I understood completely. When you no longer have something to nurture, something to strive toward, life begins to lose its meaning. The mind slows, the body follows, and soon you simply begin to fade. Residing in a long-term care facility can often feel like existing as just another face in a place where time progresses, yet substantive change is scarce. When contemplating a move to such an environment, it is critical to deeply examine what provides meaning and purpose in life. Upon relocating, the endeavor to discover such fulfillment extends beyond merely filling one's time. It necessitates actively striving to maintain the elements that instill vitality. A significant regret voiced by many is the unexpected and accelerated decline in physical well-being. Prior to transitioning to a nursing home, one may have been managing adequately, maintaining a level of self-sufficiency that permitted independent living. Activities such as grocery shopping, morning stretching, and simply walking around the house contributed to preserving physical strength and mobility. However, the shift to a nursing home setting can disrupt these established routines, leading to unforeseen consequences. Initially, the transition might seem advantageous. Meals are provided, eliminating the need for cooking, and assistance is readily available at the touch of a button. However, this convenience can inadvertently foster dependence and physical deterioration. Reduced physical exertion leads to muscle weakness and stiffness. The simple act of rising from a chair can transform into a burdensome task. The physical conditioning that was diligently maintained over years can rapidly diminish. This phenomenon is not unique to any single individual. Many experience a similar trajectory, observing their peers transition from walking independently to relying on mobility aids, and requiring assistance with tasks that were once effortlessly managed. Ironically, the increased level of support seems to correlate with a heightened need for it. One poignant example is that of Alice, an 81-year-old woman who initially displayed remarkable vigor. She adhered to a daily walking regimen and adamantly refused to succumb to the limitations of age. However, within a few months, her activity levels declined. She progressed from walking to using a walker and ultimately became reliant on a wheelchair. She lamented that she felt as though she had aged a decade in a mere few months. The principle at play is that physical inactivity leads to physical decline. In a nursing home environment where convenience is prioritized, it is easy to lose sight of the fundamental importance of movement for maintaining overall health and vitality. Had the rate of physical decline been fully appreciated beforehand, a more concerted effort to remain active and challenge oneself, even when unmotivated, would have been made. When considering a nursing home, it is essential to realistically assess one's capacity to maintain physical strength and motivation in an environment designed for effortless living. Once physical activity diminishes, regaining it can be a formidable challenge. Another significant concern, often underestimated, is the erosion of privacy and personal dignity. One may not fully consider the extent of privacy that will be lost. At home, one has personal space and the ability to close one's bedroom. Entering a nursing home meant relinquishing a significant degree of personal autonomy. Previously, I could relish quiet moments or manage tasks according to my own preferences. However, inside those walls, privacy became a precious commodity, often unattainable. From the moment I arrived, the feeling of being constantly observed was pervasive, with staff regularly entering and exiting, scheduled room inspections, and shared communal areas where solitude was a rarity. Even mundane activities like dressing or using the restroom frequently necessitated assistance. I understood that the staff were performing their duties, but accepting help for tasks I had managed independently throughout my life was a challenge. I recall during my initial week grappling with the concept of seeking permission for actions I once performed instinctively. Wanting to shower might involve waiting for available assistance. Needing the restroom could mean enduring a prolonged wait after pressing the call button. Even meal choices were restricted. Disliking the day's menu offered little recourse. Then there was the matter of roommates. Not every resident is granted a private room, and sharing space with a randomly assigned individual can lead to complications. I was fortunate to have a considerate roommate, but I heard accounts from others whose experiences were less positive. Some had roommates who were noisy, untidy, or suffered from cognitive disorders that severely disrupted sleep. Regardless of attempts to personalize the room, it never truly felt like my own. Dignity is a hard-won attribute, and I underestimated the extent to which I would have to surrender it upon entering the nursing home. The frequent unannounced entries, the practice of addressing residents as patients rather than individuals, and the imposition of externally dictated routines all contributed to a sense of transformation. I began to feel less like myself and more like an entry on a roster. If considering nursing home placement, it's vital to contemplate whether you're prepared to relinquish the privacy and control you've possessed throughout your life, because reclaiming it proves challenging. I began to regret the decision, realizing that leaving would be more complicated than I had initially thought. When I first moved into the nursing home, I viewed it as a temporary arrangement. I intended to assess the situation, and if dissatisfied, simply return home. However, I underestimated the difficulties of extricating myself once I was situated there. Initially, it appeared straightforward. If I disliked it, I would simply go back. But my home had changed during my absence, and maintaining it from a distance proved challenging. My children had already started reorganizing, disposing of items they deemed unnecessary and considering renting out the property. When I mentioned returning home, they responded hesitantly, questioning my ability to manage independently and suggesting that remaining in the nursing home would be safer. Their concern was for my well-being. Furthermore, my physical condition had deteriorated. Months of living in an environment where I was relieved of cooking, cleaning, and even extensive walking had weakened me. The independence I once enjoyed was fading, making the prospect of moving back home more daunting than I had anticipated. My confidence in my ability to live alone had diminished, and that fear kept me confined. I encountered others who shared similar experiences. They had initially envisioned a trial period in the nursing home, but it was harder to leave than they had anticipated. Entering a nursing home might seem like a straightforward choice, but the reality often diverges from initial expectations. What starts as a short-term solution can gradually become a permanent situation. Individuals often underestimate the difficulty of transitioning back to independent living. As time passes, reintegrating into life outside the facility becomes increasingly challenging. Some residents find themselves without viable options, their homes sold or their financial resources depleted by the ongoing costs of care. At that point, a return becomes impossible. This critical aspect is frequently overlooked in initial discussions. Moving into a nursing home appears to be a reversible decision, but for the majority, it is not. The nursing home progressively becomes their entire world. Life before fades into distant recollection. If a nursing home is under consideration, it is essential to reflect on the possibility that departing may not be as simple as imagined. Once settled, various obstacles, encompassing financial, physical, and emotional aspects, can prove more formidable than anticipated. If you're finding this information valuable, please signal your presence by entering the number 6 in the comments section. If you're new here, subscribing and activating the notification bell will ensure you don't miss future videos. Your support is invaluable as it enables us to keep producing engaging content. In retrospect, growing older is not a regret. However, believing a nursing home was the sole available option is. The expectation was comfort, safety, and an improved quality of life. Instead, a world that progressively eroded independence, privacy, purpose, and self-worth was found. Are all nursing homes inherently negative environments? Not necessarily. Some individuals genuinely require the specialized care they provide. However, before committing, carefully weigh the sacrifices involved. Life will fundamentally change. Given a second chance, there would be a stronger fight to remain at home, a deeper exploration of alternative support systems to avoid forfeiting personal freedom. Assurance would be sought to confirm the true necessity of such a permanent relocation. If confronted with this decision, pause to contemplate, is this truly the best path or merely the most convenient? The life you currently possess, your routines, independence, and choices, is worth preserving for as long as feasible. Thank you for participating today. We value your feedback. Share one key takeaway from this discussion and how you intend to apply it. Your insights matter greatly. Your engagement is a source of motivation and encouragement. If you appreciated this presentation and found it useful, please like, subscribe, and share. Your backing allows us to continue generating high-quality content to educate and inspire. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to connecting in our next video.